Board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Troop, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Griffin, Alderwoman Triplett, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderman Wessels, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Florida, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Here.
Alderman Troop, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderwoman Griffin, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, 19 present.
Quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by Chaplain William Wertel from the Barlog Kuzai Zero Memorial Post. And he can tell you what all that stands for when he gets up here. Chaplain. Chaplain.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. It is really my pleasure to be here, and I did not know I was supposed to say a little bit before giving the opening prayer for the return from your recess time. Our post is an American Legion post. We are of a Polish background before the Kosciuszko district was converted to commercial. And I see a couple of gentlemen here already who are members of our post, and I see some supporters also. We are in Soulard, 11th and Sydney. As a matter of fact, the Boys Club of St. Louis tomorrow is painting our 305-foot chain link fence, so we have a big connection with the people in Soulard, being a member of the SRG myself. But if you have any questions, I've got some history of the post and things like that with me. We can discuss that later if you wish. So, as we return from summer recess to start your difficult job for our city of St. Louis, we ask the Lord to guide you and welcome all of you back. Welcome. So let us pray. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide their hearts and their minds in a spirit of fairness and service to humanity. Impart your supreme wisdom on their activities so that their affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you, Lord, for being the source of guidance today and always. Amen.
Let's give the chaplain a round of applause. He also fought in the Korean War. Thank you for coming. Introduction round of guests. Any introduction round of guests? Alderman from the 9th.
You missed me, didn't you?
Yeah, I missed you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Ronnie Auer, former committee man, state rep, and more.
All around good guy. Thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I have 3 honored guests this morning, Mr. Wendell Harris and Mr. Gary Otten from the Painters District Council number 2, and Mr. Willie Vaughn with St. Louis Job Corps, which is in the 22nd Ward.
Any further introductions? Alderman from the 3rd.
Mr. President, members of the board, it gives me great pleasure to introduce as my special guest today, Stevie Goodlow.
Any further introductions? Any further? Oh.
Lancia and Joanne Williams. Anthony Lancia from the Associated Council of, anyway, and Joanne from the Electrical Workers Hall. No, Carpenters Hall.
That's good. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? We also have the chaplain's wife with us today, Marlene. Thanks for joining us today, Marlene. Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, members of the board. It's so good to be back here on September 16th, which, for you folks don't know, this is National Mayflower Day. So it is my pleasure, the man whose footprint is on Plymouth Rock, Mr. Fred Stephanie.
Alderman from 13th, recognized on approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move to approve the minutes of the June 24th, June 30th, and July 8th meetings.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. In discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Man, you guys wake up. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A and B of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes. I have from His Honor the Mayor the following correspondence. Dear members of the board, I am returning herewith Board Bill 40 through 43 with an indication of my disapproval. My disapproval is based primarily on the attached city councilor's opinion. At my direction, the city's Director of Operations, the Director of Streets, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, and the President of the Board of Public Service will work with the sponsor of this bill to implement appropriate traffic calming measures to address the problem areas within the park. Sincerely, Francis G. Slade, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Dispense with line item. Are you done? Are you done, Madam Clerk?
That's the extent of report of city officials.
We'll dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Dispense with line items 8 through 10. First reading board bills.
Board Bill 136, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel in the 15-foot wide east-west alley in City Block 1013, bounded by Washington, Reverend T.E. Huntley, Locust, and Garrison. Board Bill 137, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel in a portion of the 15-foot wide east-west alley in City Block 1043, beginning at Josephine Baker and extending eastwardly to a point and bounded by Washington, Leonard, Locust, and Josephine Baker in the city. Board Bill 138, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel from Hickory Street from Carr Lane to Rankin, and Rankin from South right-of-way to Hickory Street northwardly to a point in the city. Board Bill 139, sponsored by Alderman Villa, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to vacate travel on a portion of Catlin Street, beginning at the right-of-way line of Railroad Street and continuing eastwardly to a point in Railroad Street from the south right-of-way line of Espenshide to Marceau, 100 through 110-foot portion of Marceau, beginning at 10.40 feet west of Railroad Street to a point 47.22 feet east of Railroad Street to West Railroad Street, a portion of Davis east of Polk, continuing eastwardly to a point. Board Bill 140, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to accept and execute on behalf of the city certain financial assistance agreement offered by the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management District, substantially in the form attached hereto, for the project entitled Airport Food Waste Recycling Demonstration Pilot Project, for a maximum obligation of $15,000 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 141, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the comptroller, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making certain findings with respect to the transfer of up to $13,727,769 of excess monies that the city intends to transfer from the Debt Service Stabilization Fund to the Airport Revenue Fund, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 142, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2900 through 38 and 3000 through 3036 Washington, and 509 Reverend T.E. Huntley, and 2927 through 35 Locust, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 143, sponsored by Alderwoman Griffin, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 1219 through 1319 Clinton, 2101 through 90, and 2113 through 21 North 13th Street, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 144, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3665 Shenandoah, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 145, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2621 through 23 McNair, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 146, sponsored by President Reed and Alderwoman Griffin, an ordinance pertaining to the transit sales tax approved by the voters of the city, creating the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, Account 1, appropriating $9,975,000 from said sales tax to the Bi-State Development Agency, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 147, sponsored by President Reed and Alderwoman Griffin, an ordinance pertaining to the transit sales tax approved by the voters of the city, creating the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, Account 2, appropriating $9,975,000 from the said sales tax to the Bi-State Development Agency, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 148, sponsored by President Reed and Alderwoman Griffin, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $19,227,000, which sum is hereby appropriated out of the Transportation Trust Fund to the Bi-State Development Agency for the transportation purposes, and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 149, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property as indicated on the district map from D, Multiple Family Dwelling District, and F, Neighborhood Commercial District, to the F, Neighborhood Commercial District in City Block 4971, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 150, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property as indicated on the district map from C, Multiple Family Dwelling District, to the F, Neighborhood Commercial District in City Block 5445, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 151, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5473 through 75 Brown, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 152, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5227 through 39 Northrop area, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 153, sponsored by Alderwoman Triplett, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2215 through 39 Washington, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 154, sponsored by Alderwoman Griffin, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for North 25th Street, Malamphy, North Jefferson, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 155, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance pertaining to street vendors by amending Ordinance 65061 by deleting paragraph G of Section 4 of such ordinance, thereby prohibiting street vendors in the area previously known as the 14th Ward Vending District. Board Bill 156, sponsored by Alderman Carter, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 68813 and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 27th Ward Liquor Control District for a period of 3 years from the effective date, containing an exception allowing during the moratorium period for the transfer of existing licenses under certain circumstances and the issuance of drink license to persons operating a restaurant at previously non-licensed premises and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 157, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance establishing a stop sign for all northbound traffic traveling
Some order.
on Euclid at Wabada Place, establishing a stop sign for all southbound traffic traveling on Euclid at Hammett Place and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 158, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 68403, prohibiting the issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 19th Ward Liquor Control District for a period of 3 years from the effective date, containing exceptions and allowing during the moratorium period for the transfer of existing licenses under circumstances and the issuance of drink license to persons operating a restaurant at previously non-licensed premises and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 159, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 68748 pertaining to the issuance of any package or drink liquor licenses for premises within the boundaries of the 3rd Ward Liquor Control District and in lieu thereof containing the following supplementary exemptions: renewal of an existing license and establishment of an entertainment district and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 160, sponsored by Alderman Schmidt, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 68841 enacting a new ordinance confirming the prohibition of issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the new boundaries of the 20th Ward Liquor Control District for a period of 3 years from the effective date and containing exemptions allowing during the period for the transfer of existing licenses for certain circumstances for the issuance of drink license, no package, to persons operating a restaurant with at least 50% food sales at a previously non-licensed premises, or the issuance of drink licenses, no package, to the persons operating a premises with a Cherokee address from the curb line, from the west curb line of Jefferson to the east curb line of Nebraska, or to persons who are on the effective date of this ordinance operating a bar for at least 3 years, containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 161, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 68809 and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any package liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 10th Ward Liquor Control District and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 162, sponsored by Alderwoman Griffin, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 68885 and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any packaged liquor license for any non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 5th Ward, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 163, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 68131 and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 4th Ward, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 164, sponsored by Alderwoman Triplett, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on the 20-foot wide north-south alley in City Block 1450 East, bounded by Halliday, Compton, Pestalozzi, and Virginia. Board Bill 165, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4207 Arco containing a severability clause. That's the extent of our first readings.
Reference to committee.
To the Streets Committee, Board Bills 136, 137, 138, 139, 155, 157, and 164. To the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bills 143, 144, 145, 152, and 165. To the Housing Committee, Board Bills 142, 149, 150, 151, 153, and 154. To the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bills 146, 147, and 148. To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bills 156, 158, 159, 160, 161, 162, and 163. To the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bills 140 and 141. That's the extent of reference to committees.
We will dispense with line items 13 through 15. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 107, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen, an ordinance amending to the animal laws of the city, amending sections of Ordinance 67799, 66384, 62941, and 62853, and enacting in lieu thereof a new ordinance pertaining to the same subject matter. A new section requiring the spaying and neutering and microchipping of dogs and cats. A new penalty section, a new section prohibiting the pet store, sale of dogs and cats, containing a severability and an emergency clause.
Alderwoman from 28th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 107.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move for perfection of Board Bill 107.
Been moved by the Alderwoman from 28th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 15th. Alderwoman from 28th, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board Bill 107 is a bill which pertains to responsible pet ownership in the city of St. Louis, and it requires the spay and neutering of dogs and cats unless you are a hobby breeder, a commercial breeder, or a show dog owner. It requires microchipping of dogs and cats because that's the only way to get the dogs or cats returned to the right owner in any reliable sort of way. The exceptions to the spay and neuter requirement are that you would have a commercial breeder license if you're a breeder, that you obtain from the Missouri Department of Agriculture. That legislation is already in place. That's state statute. A hobby or a show breeder would be able to obtain a city license if you want to breed your pet or your family dog or cat, and you could obtain that for $200 through the city health department. The purpose of this bill is not to penalize people for not spaying or neutering their dogs or cats. The purpose of the bill is to get them to spay or neuter their dog and cat. So there are funds set aside in this bill, provided for in this bill, that would allow for the financial assistance to folks that can't afford to spay or neuter their dog or cat, so that it is not a burden on those folks, financial burden on those folks to do so. And anyone who, if they were issued a citation for not having a dog or cat that was spayed or neutered, and if they took care of it within the next 60 days, the charges would be dismissed. So this is not intended to be a punitive bill in any way. It's intended to encourage people to take advantage of the opportunities to spay and neuter their dogs and cats, unless they want to show them or breed them, in which case there are provisions in place for that. The law would not take effect for 1 year, so give people some time to go ahead and get their animals spayed or neutered, and go into effect a year from now.
Okay, any further discussion? Alderman from the second.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I rise in opposition to the mandatory spay and neuter portion of this bill. I do believe that animals should be chipped. I do believe that owners of pets should spay and neuter their animals. We passed an ordinance some time ago making it so you needed to spay and neuter your animals. But what has happened is there are animals that have been held in animal control because an owner whose dog was either lost, captured, and was held at animal control did not want their dog spayed or neutered. And so that dog has been held for months in litigation and trying to figure out what's going on with this animal. I have 2 pets myself, and I'm getting my female spayed this Monday. And even myself, even though I'm a very avid animal rights person, I have reservations myself, but I know it's the right thing to do. I think if you make mandatory spay and neuter a law here in the city, what is going to happen is you're going to have people that's going to go under the radar and not want to get their dog licensed, not want to get their dog vaccinated because they don't want their dog or cat spayed or neutered. I think that there will be people that will relinquish their animals once they are captured and held in animal control because they don't want to pay the fine, the fee, or don't want the hassle. This is actually raising the fee for the fines if you are caught with your dog is not spayed or neutered. It's so easy to just say, you know what, I don't want to pay this money to get this dog. I don't want to go through this hassle because I have too many things to do. And you relinquish the dog and you go out and get another dog for $40, $20, even for free. I think that it is very important for us as the city to hold clinics, to make money and funding available for people to get their dogs spayed or neutered. I think we need to educate our people. I didn't get a chance to make copies this morning, but I have information that from the ASPCA and other letters from other organizations that say that even though other cities have passed this legislation, because there's not enough data out there, because you can look at an animal but you can't tell if it's spayed or neutered, because there's really no way to monitor the numbers if it's really being successful or not, I think we're jumping the gun. To say that we'll just say, well, we'll wait for a year or we'll do a trial. How many animals have already lost their life because they were held because the owner didn't want it spayed or neutered? The health department just this year, January, was able to actually start to collect fines on citations, which absolutely blows my mind that when we passed this legislation 19 years ago when Rodney McAllister was killed by the pack of dogs, and we spent a lot of time on that legislation, and I was very involved in that the health department, animal control, has not had the teeth to be able to collect fines. So we tell our constituents to call animal control and have someone fined for feces in the yard or dog on a leash or whatsoever, and really it's just a citation. If that person voluntarily paid that fine, then fine. But really, as a city, we haven't had the ability to collect. I've also been told through all of this education process for me on the health committee that there was actually money set aside in the past where owners whose dogs were captured could actually have gotten a sponsorship, a voucher to have their dogs spayed or neutered. But when I asked the health director how many animals, how many homeowners actually took, you know, were given this voucher or knew that this was happening, how many of those people were given that money, and she couldn't say. The only thing she could say is how much money was spent on animals at animal control that were adopted, that were up for adoption. But our residents haven't even been able to know that this was here. I didn't even know that money was set aside. How many animals have already lost their life because that was not given to them? We are going under restructure right now of animal control. And I think until we can get good footing and good grounding as to what is actually going to happen, which we haven't been able to do yet, I don't think that this is the time. I don't think that we have the regulations there. I don't think we even have the educated animal control officers to be able to go out and actually enforce what needs to be done. I know that you've been getting emails ever since we went out of session, last session, and I do know that you know that there are a lot of animal lovers in this city, and I've been getting emails from all across this, many states. But I think to make it mandatory and to raise the fine, and even though the Alderwoman said in committee that there will be funds. If you decide to go ahead and get your dog spayed or neutered within that 60-day time, your fine will be forgiven. The cost of spay and neuter goes anywhere from $10 to $200 to $300. Someone may not be able to afford that. In the information that I have here, it says that low-income neighborhoods, poverty-stricken neighborhoods are the ones that this actually devastates the most because they cannot afford it. And in our economy and in this recession and the way things are happening, if you're trying to feed your family, you're trying to keep your house, where in my neighborhood, I was #1 in subprime lending, #3 in foreclosures. When you're trying to get a job and you don't have one, and you're trying to make ends meet, the first thing to go is Fido. Whether you can feed them or you just don't want to take care of them anymore and you just give them up. And right now, the way things are done, and I know we've come to some resolution and we'll talk about this down the line, you have nowhere to even surrender an animal right now. And if you just said you just want a good life or good place or just a mental thought of what's going to happen to my dog that I can't afford, and you can't even surrender them, what's going to happen? Today, this week, I've made 2 service requests to refuse to pick up 2 animals killed in my ward, hit by cars. These look like healthy animals that just got out and got on the loose. We have a lot of work to do with this animal control, and I will assure you we have some very good positive things to look forward to in this session. But I think, even though I commend the Alderwoman for doing her research and finding out everything that's out there, I've been a lover of animals, and I know my animal stuff, and I do a lot of reading, and I'm telling you, the neighborhoods it's going to affect the most is going to be the neighborhoods that are economically challenged, which is my neighborhood. And I, of all people, want people to keep their pets. I want pets to be healthy, and I don't want people to have a fine hanging over them and then getting Fido, spayed or neuter. In my case, Tessa, who's 3 years old, you know, it's just something about going under the knife. And you read things and it just says, well, you're gutting your animal. There's a lot of things out there. There are some people that don't want their dog if they're not intact because they just don't believe in that. They believe it's just Mother Nature. And if they go into their cycle every 6 months and have puppies, then so be it. That's the way it's supposed to be. But responsible pet owners do need to be educated. I got an email about a month ago from the health department about a program that was going on in Tower Grove where you can go and get your dog chipped for free and get into the spay and neuter program. I have not yet been asked if we can do this in my community as alderpersons. I haven't been approached ever, though I know about the programs, to offer that service to our constituents. Hey, here's a spay and neuter program. Here, let's educate you on what to do to keep your pet and be a responsible pet owner. I think at this time, it just isn't the time to pass this. And I do have an amendment to the bill, but I would like to ask the sponsor, would she consider talking with us a little bit further on this? But if not, I do have an amendment to the bill to actually take out the mandatory language so that we are still, as a city, as a board, telling folks, we do want you to spay and neuter your animals. And we're going to try to provide that service for you and make it more accessible for you within this next year. And then maybe we can go into mandatory spay and neuter. But all the animal professionals are saying that this is not good. It has not worked. The numbers are out there that is skewed. And I'm just scared that those folks that already don't like to take their pet to the clinic to get their shots will definitely not do it now, because now it's mandatory. And how many litters are we going to have of animals that's going to be out there unwanted, on death row? No one wants that. That's death row. It is. What can we do to try to make this better? I think making it mandatory now is not the time. Down the line, we should look into it. I think we need to provide funding for spay and neuter, and even though I know the Alderwoman says there's funding there, technically, according to the the testimony that the health director gave is that the fines that have been collected is the money that will be used for the spay and neuter voucher system. And if that's only happened within the last 8 months, I don't know how much that is. And I don't know if that's something that can sustain all the animals that need to be spayed and neutered in this city. So will the Alderwoman from the 28th please yield?
Alderwoman from the 28th, will you yield for questioning to the Alderwoman from the 2nd? I will. Please proceed, Alderwoman from the 2nd. Thank you.
Would you consider holding the bill, put it on the informal calendar for today so we could talk a little further?
I'll consider that.
Will you do that before you ask for a vote? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 3rd.
Mr. President, I rise in opposition of this bill, and let me explain why. Everybody does not have a poodle, and everybody does not have a little dog that they love that they keep in the house. Everybody doesn't have a dog that they take walking in the evenings and in the mornings. My home has been broken into so many times. They took the whole back end of my garage out, broke the wood, went in there and stole my child's bicycle. The vandals in some neighborhoods are just out off the chain. I've got me some vicious dogs now. They haven't broken into my house in the last 8 years because I have some vicious dogs out there in my yard. I had one of them that accidentally got out because I kept a friend's dog for a little bit, and that dog dug a hole under my fence. And my other big dog got out, was a German Shepherd. She was a female. Got out because of that hole was in that, under that fence. And that dog was caught by the dog catchers. We went and got her out, but we had to spay her. That dog became so docile, so friendly, she would take up with anybody. I think when you spay and you neuter those dogs, you change what they are, you change their character, you change how they are. I don't need a docile dog. I need a mean dog that's in my yard, that I got an 8-foot fence that keeps them out of it, keeps them from getting out in the street. But I tell you, God help anybody who climbs over that fence or tries to break my garage down again and get in there, because if that dog doesn't take care of him, I'm gonna get rid of the dog. We need not spay and neuter all these animals. I think in the poor communities, and not like in the areas around Forest Park out there where you have $200,000 and $300,000 and $400,000 homes out there. You don't have burglars that prey on those people like they do in smaller communities like down in the Hyde Park area. Why they don't go out there, I think it's because all the police are so different out in that neighborhood, in those neighborhoods, than they are in the areas that I represent. And I think that people have the right to have a dog to protect themselves. Those who just want a pet, fine, I have no problem with that. But some of us need to have some protection. I got burglar alarm systems. I got cameras I have put up around my house now. I don't have one in the backyard because I got those vicious dogs out there. And if you get in that backyard, you're gonna have a terrible problem because you have to climb a 6-foot fence, and in the back is an 8-foot fence on the alley to get in there. Now, if you climb over that fence and it's got barbed wire on it against the law, you're gonna have a problem with those dogs. And I need the dogs to protect my property, my house, my kids. And anybody who wants to have their dog spayed or neutered, they can do that. So many people in the Hyde Park area that I represent can't afford $200 to go and spay or neuter their animal. Those that are running around on the street, certainly we need the dog catchers to be able to pick them up. And if the people can't afford them, put them up for adoption. And if they don't adopt them, then whatever they've been doing with those animals, they can continue doing those animals. But to make it mandatory that people spay or neuter an animal, I think is not fair, I think it's not right, and I think it's something that should not be done. I think the people who let their animals run loose on the street, I think those people who allow their animal to get out here and procreate in areas wherever he wants to go without any control, they need to lose those animals and they should be fined. But certainly those people who would like to keep an animal, and in some cases, animals are for protection of people's homes. All of them are not just pets. Of course, those are pets I got out there, but they also protect my home in the rear, and I've had lots of damage, lots of thefts. Bicycles that I have purchased have disappeared out of my yard. I had once, when I first moved over there, where they climbed over that 8-foot fence, and how they handed my 2 kids' bicycles over that fence, I haven't figured it out yet, because they had to get between the barbed wire that was up there on top of them. But see, thieves are innovative. Thieves have a lot of imagination, and thieves will come and take whatever it is that you got of some value if you don't take the steps necessary in order to protect it. So I think we need to talk about this bill a little longer, a little more in depth. I understand what the sponsor of this bill is trying to do, and I agree with it. But then there are some alternatives. There's another side to this question, and I think I just talked about what some of those things were. So I would encourage you to vote against it if she's not willing to sit down and let's work out a happy medium on this bill, because there are some alternatives, and there is another side to just spay and neutering every dog that you that people have. I've got a little bitty Yorkie, and that Yorkie has a time playing with a little alley cat. Where that cat came from, I don't know. Looked up one day and he was on my front porch. I ran him off. My son, who has a much softer heart than I have, picked that cat and took him and kept him in his room for at least a couple weeks. But now that cat has become a part of the family. He plays with my Yorkie. They just have so much fun. That Yorkie is not going to protect anything. If somebody came in and stomped their foot twice, he'd run and hide underneath something. But that's the dog. That is not the dog I have for protection. I wouldn't mind spading, neutering her. But the point is, the dogs that I have to protect my house, my property, and my headquarters. They broke in my headquarters so many times up there on 20th Street, stole my plumbing, went in the basement, took every piece of copper that we had in there. These people are outrageous because of the unemployment situation. So I need to have my 2 dogs that I have in the backyard that only get out 1, 2 o'clock in the night when I take them out in the park to run a little bit. I need those dogs, and I don't want them spayed or neutered, because when they neutered my dog, my German Shepherd, she got so docile, there was nothing else you could do with that dog, but she just happened to get out, and I think a car hit her. This has been 8 or 10 years ago. But certainly, you do not want to spay and neuter every dog, because it changes their temperament, their attitudes, and it becomes a different dog.
All right. Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm somewhat in opposition, I'll put it that way, because I think sometimes we don't do the planning and understanding of an issue before we go straight to legislation. So what I would like to do is to ask for support of the Alderwoman's suggestion from the 2nd Ward, and I would be willing to work with you, because there's no way this can work unless there's some intervention, prevention put in place that is sound. We have an awareness campaign put in place so that we can work with those who are less fortunate than others and make sure that resources are in place for them, and work with the appropriate federal, local agencies, as well as corporations, to assist in making sure those resources are available. And I tell you why I say that. I never owned an animal, mainly because I couldn't afford it. I had to raise children and send them to school, and there was no room in the budget for the animal. Now, I had common sense to know that, but a lot of families don't. And so they do have an animal, and they don't do the right things. But I think that we could help them by putting some right things in place. But I had a family call me over the summer. Their dog was stolen. It ended up wherever they're going now. And they told them that it was mandatory that this dog be spayed, and they had to pay for it. They had X amount of days to get the money there, and if they didn't do it, then the dog was going to be put to sleep. That doesn't make any sense to me. These were good residents. I went to look at their home. They had a safe environment for the dog, all of that. Somebody came in and stole him, used the dog was battered and everything, and then threw it out on the street. So there will be instances like that, and you don't want to necessarily put those people in that kind of jeopardy. And they probably would go ahead and take care of it, but they just didn't have the money within that small time frame that we had available for them. So we have to do some other things. And we have so many networks to educate people through your block units, your community education centers, your neighborhood organizations, your business associations. I mean, there's so much work that needs to be done first. And that's why I hope that we do more of that kind of understanding before we do legislation, is to put the planning and the process in place that most assist our residents and not just take care of a few select people. So I do ask on behalf of those residents if we could table this and put it on the informal calendar and then just do our due diligence. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I also stand in opposition. I agree with my colleague from the 2nd, but I think this legislation, I think the chipping part of it is fantastic. You know, we've actually done a program, and it was years ago after we passed the first legislation in the 9th Ward, but it was $10. It wasn't free to have dogs chipped. And I think we need to look into doing that more often, because more people are acquiring dogs and walking dogs in the neighborhoods. But to make it mandatory, I think at that point in time for spade and neutering, we're entering into the house of responsible dog owners where their pets may never get out, and requiring them to do something that they may not want to do. And I think the legislation goes just a little bit too far in that category. Number 3 is we've never had enough resources available to buy the trucks and the manpower to go out and catch the strays that we have running all over, you know, the city. And pretty much we're talking about dogs, but I don't know about everyone else, but I get a lot of calls on cats where people just abandon cats and put them out, and they're the hardest critters to catch if you go to catch them. And then if you do, what do you do with them? Because right now, I don't think there's anybody that wants a stray cat. In fact, what they want, my understanding is the constituents that I talk to, if they catch them, they want you to pay for the spading or neutering and then let them go again, which to me really doesn't resolve a problem. But I'm in opposition of the mandatory spading and neutering of animals.
All right, thank you. Other one from the 14th.
I also rise in opposition to this bill. One of the things that I find creates a flaw with it is if we have people that are compliant and take their dogs for their shots and regular animal care, this is going to have them not take their dogs to the veterinarian to get the regular rabies inoculations that are so important to the public health issues. They would not probably take their dogs to the vet. We would create another epidemic of a possible disease that may take place. The other issue is, I think we're infringing upon people's rights with this legislation. I think education is the key, and getting people to work toward responsible pet ownership. I think this also creates an opportunity for people to just dump their pets, you know, without a place to have them properly cared for. I would encourage Alderman Cruzen to please withdraw this and reconsider. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 1st.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I too am opposed to this bill. May I inquire the lady from
Alderman
from the 18th?
Alderman from the 28th, will you yield for questioning to the Alderman from the 1st? Yes. Alderman from the 1st, please proceed.
Alderman, if we pass this bill as it is now, how is that going to address the 10,000 stray dogs that we have now in the city of St. Louis?
I don't know if there are 10,000 stray dogs in the city of St. Louis, but if dogs are spayed and neutered, there will be fewer stray dogs down the road. Now, this is not a bill that is going to, within 6 months, reduce the number of stray dogs, but it will, over time, reduce the number of stray dogs. 90% of the dogs that are euthanized in this country are not spayed or neutered. 90% of them. I'll stop the answer to my question there. Thank you.
Well, lady, how are you going to get the dogs to the place where you're going to spay and neuter them if you don't have dog catchers, if you don't have no way of securing these animals? Currently, right now, the health department has no manpower or resources or anything else to manage the health care of people, let alone dogs. So how can the health department have the opportunity of enacting or enforcing this ordinance when they don't even have dog catchers?
You know, this bill really isn't a referendum on the health department. I'll relay a story to you, a call that came into Citizens Service Bureau just last week. A neighbor called and said that her neighbor had a dog that had had 3 litters of puppies already this year, and the owner of the dog was kicking the dog, who was pregnant again, this time for the 4th time, kicking the dog to try to get it to have the puppies now. There is not one thing that the health department can do about that right now, unless they catch the individual kicking the dog or abusing the dog in the act. So with this bill, that person, if they want to be a hobby or hobby breeder, it's called, where you have 2 females, no more than 2 females, with this bill, they would have a license through the city. The city would be able to go and check on that call. As it is, I mean, they can go there, and if they catch them in the act, which you know how likely that is, then they could get them for animal abuse. But this person can just continue to breed that dog and mistreat that dog and sell those puppies to whoever with no supervision at all. And the ones that they don't sell usually get turned out on the street, and so then they become part of the number of animals that are running loose on the street. So this isn't really a referendum on the health department. This is really a long-term solution, a look to the future. I've heard a lot of talk about education and how we could educate, but I mean, that's always been the case. I mean, we've always been able to you know, if you want to run programs in your neighborhoods, could always do that to educate folks. This is a long-term solution to more responsible pet ownership and to give the health department some way of following up on calls. There are a lot of calls for service for people who, you know, are mistreating animals or who are breeding animals or selling them out of the back of a truck. That's not a good situation for the animals either.
Lady, do you have a fiscal note on this bill?
I don't.
Do you have any idea how much it's going to cost the taxpayers to enact this bill?
This bill won't cost the taxpayers any more than they're paying now.
Well, currently, what they're paying now, I guess, what is it, $46 and $50? Who's going to do the spading and neutering? The health department? Who's going to be responsible for making that happen?
The health department does not do spaying and neutering themselves. There are a lot of shelters who do spay and neuter. Of course, there are vets who spay and neuter. There are people who run a van program, goes to different neighborhoods in the city that can do spaying and neutering. So the health department won't be in the business of directly of spaying and neutering animals.
Okay, in the bill they have $46 and $50.
Well, that's current law. That's not anything new.
What is that? I know it's current law, but what is it for?
Currently, if you're supposed to get your rabies shot for your dog, of course. If your dog has been spayed or neutered, you get that rabies shot and the registration. You pay $4. If that dog has not been spayed or neutered, you get the rabies shot and you pay $50. And that's nothing new. That's an ordinance that we passed many years ago.
On page 5, section B, where it's referring to what your language is essentially doing. If this applies to spade and neuter and you have a cost associated with it. How is this going to interface with your bill?
This section here, this ordinance, it restates what is already on the books. And this paragraph here, tell me if this is the one that you're referring to. The health department shall establish a fee of $50 for the combined unit of corresponding vaccination registration. Is that the paragraph you're talking about, Alderman? Line 15, well, I don't know if we have the same printout of the bill, but at any rate, yes, that's current ordinance already, that if, when you go to register your dog and get a rabies shot, that you currently pay $50 for a dog that is not spayed or neutered and $4 for a dog that is.
So if you don't...
what this paragraph does, it adds the fact that you need to have your dog microchipped also.
Okay, so if your dog get out and you don't have the money to pay for this, what happens to the dog?
If your dog gets out and your dog is not spayed or neutered, I guess is what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. Your dog is not spayed or neutered and he gets out, then you would have to get your dog spayed or neutered within 60 days or you would have a citation.
Okay, now, what you all seem to be operating is under the impression that if you spade or neuter a dog, then they become less aggressive?
No, that really has nothing to do with this bill. This bill is about trying to create an environment where we end up with fewer stray animals in this city, with fewer dogs being abused, fewer dogs being dumped, fewer dogs running the streets. That's really what this bill is all about. Okay, well, all I'm saying is if you eliminate the reproduction of animals or dogs in this equation, in order to do that, what I'm trying to get you to understand, you have to somehow have possession of those dogs. Without dog catchers, without the health department having adequate manpower to do that, how do you get to that point? Well, through a complaint system, perhaps like the story I just recalled to you about the neighbor who called about her neighbor who was kicking the dog so the dog would go ahead and have its 4th litter of puppies this year.
In that equation.
You don't think he has any good intentions for those dogs, do you?
And this is my point, then I'll be through. In that equation that you just used, did they call the fire department, the police department, or the health department? Who did they call?
They called Citizen Service Bureau, who referred it to the health.
Citizen Service Bureau.
Who referred it to the health department. As far as I know, I don't know if they called other I don't know if they call
Do
them
you know
wage.
how long it take a complaint to get out of Citizen Service Bureau, if they get out at all? Or how effective it is? If the Citizen Service Bureau is not dealing with my constituents' needs, they don't even respond to that. How, and who's going to get the dog? Who goes out and picks up the dog?
Well, right now, no one can, unless, no one can either pick up that dog unless they can catch them in the act of abusing that dog. But if this ordinance is passed, then someone could go out and check on this dog, this owner, who is breeding his dog, and see if he has a hobby license or maybe a commercial breeder's license. And if he doesn't, then they could...
So would a license collector have to do that?
No, that's the health department. That would be the health department.
But the health department okay, well, who in the health department, you said you're giving the responsibility to the Commissioner of Health, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, now if the Commissioner of Health has the responsibility of doing this, how can they do it with no manpower? Let me ask you this question, then we know there's no manpower there now. Do we have a veterinarian on staff at the health department?
I don't believe so.
You don't think so?
To my knowledge, we don't have a vet on staff.
Okay, the health department do not have a veterinarian. So you're going to have to contract out the spade and neutering, is that correct? So if you contract it out, how can you?
No, it would be the owner's responsibility to get the dog spayed or neutered. The city wouldn't do that.
Yeah, but I understand what I'm just saying. I think the way it is right now and the way the system works is not going to happen. It can happen because there's no manpower, there's no dog catchers, there's no anything. We voted for the last 2 years to eliminate manpower in this board in the health department. We voted here to eliminate dog catchers over the opposition of a whole lot of people. Now you're turning around and saying, we got 10,000 dogs in the universe, they're reproducing every cycle, and we want to use spade and neutering as a solution to the problem, and I just don't think that the problem is that simple. I think the problem is you have to have responsible owners of these animals. But if you have young people who are homeless, running around with these pit bulls and they're fighting on a constant basis, then you have a real serious problem. For the good people and people, see, this is what I don't like about the bill. You seem to be punishing the people that are responsible, and the people that are not responsible are getting off scot-free because they're not going to even be in the system. They're going to be subterranean, and you will never see them, and the dogs, when you see them, are either dead or fighting. So I think you need to put this bill on the informal calendar and reconstruct it where it at least will have some outcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would ask if the Alderman from the 28th would yield.
Alderman from the 28th, will you yield? And Alderman from the 22nd, please proceed.
I'm just trying to understand the process and going back to the $50 fee. And if an owner on their own gets their dog spayed and neutered, then they go to the health department, say I did it, and they pay $50 and they get some certificate. I mean, how does it work?
No, the $50 fee is already in place. That's an existing law.
Right.
If someone gets their dog rabies shot for their dogs and registers their dogs, and if they don't want to have their dog spayed or neutered, then they can have 2 intact females. They have to pay $50 for those, to register those dogs. and they would need to have a show dog or a hobby breeder's license, so that the health department could have, could go and visit that owner and make sure that if they're going to breed their dogs, that they're doing it in a responsible way. I mean, it's not just that one paragraph, it's...
So the health department, I'm just reading this paragraph, the money is for the purpose of maintaining the system of vaccination registration, basically, and the spade and neutering and microchip and identification. So when you go to a pet store, you have to register your dog with the health department when you bring the dog home?
Dogs that are adopted from shelters or pet stores have to be, already have to be spayed and neutered. It's a state law. It's not a city law, it's a state law.
Okay, but registering your dog with the health department, I just want to be clear. Because we have a dog, the girls have a dog, and I was just wondering if the dog's supposed to be registered with the health department. We got it from a pet store.
Yeah, because when you get your dog a rabies shot, that's the registration tag.
So they send the $50, the pet store sends the $50 to the health department?
I don't know the answer to that. There actually aren't any pet stores in the city of St. Louis that sell dogs or cats. There are pet stores that sell fish and, you know, that sort of thing. Someone else thinks there is. But.
All right, I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding of how we are registering the pet owners.
PetSmart actually doesn't sell dogs or cats. They run programs to adopt dogs or cats out of shelters. I mean, there is a difference. You might consider it subtle, but yes, I got a cat once. I went to PetSmart to get the cat, but I didn't buy the cat from PetSmart. There were animal adoption agencies and shelters who were there at PetSmart. So I adopted the cat from someone who was there. I mean, there is a distinction here. We don't have in the city of St. Louis pet stores that sell dogs and cats. They adopt them from agencies.
So when you adopted your dog, was a dog or cat?
When we adopted the cat, we had to get the cat. The cat was too young to be neutered at that time. We had to pay for the neutering then and take the cat back and get it neutered, which we did.
Okay, at what point did you interact with the health department?
I never interacted with the health department. You get that done at your vet or clinic or van.
That's why I guess I'm kind of confused, and maybe I'm...
But you paid the fee, which would then be paid over to the health department.
So the agency that you adopted the dog, let's say, would send a fee to the city health department so that it would be now registered with the city, that dog would be registered with the city of St. Louis?
Right.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Alderman from 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just to reiterate what was just said, right now, it's already required that your dog, your cat has a rabies vaccination. You get that done at a vet. The vet gives you the tags and the registration, and you pay the vet. Nobody has to interact with the health department now, and nobody has to interact with the health department under this law. The veterinary clinics are going to handle that portion. You're still going to go there. You're still going to be required to get a rabies vaccination. You're just also going to be required to have your pet spayed or neutered now. That's really the additional, and microchipped. Those are the additional steps. Now, clearly there's some people who have questions about that here, but the long-term goal here is to reduce the stray population in St. Louis. And I think all of us agree that the stray population on the streets is a problem, and that population is driven by reproducing stray cats and dogs. If you've got a dog and it gets out, even if you get it back, male dogs will find females that are in heat and breed with them, and that dog will have puppies. Dogs have puppies on the street every single day. So if you're opposed to this bill, I think we have to think about, what's another solution? What's something else that we can do to try to reduce the population? We're not going to euthanize our way out of the problem. We've been euthanizing cats and dogs for 100 years now, we still have a stray problem. So if you don't want to have a stray problem, which nobody does, bring an alternative to the table, I think, that addresses this problem. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 2nd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Alderman from the 24th, would you please yield?
Alderman from the 24th, will you yield to the Alderman from the 2nd? Alderman from the 2nd, please proceed.
So your understanding is if I take my dog in for its yearly rabies vaccination, I either pay that $6 for my registration or I pay the $46 because my dog is intact. And what you're saying is after that, there is no follow-up that, from your understanding, according to this board bill? Meaning that the health department will not then send you a letter if this board bill is passed and says your dog or cat is not spayed or neutered, so therefore you're leveraged to fine. Is that your understanding of this ordinance?
I think there are provisions in the ordinance that the health department is going to have to establish procedures on those questions. I mean, I think it leaves some of those questions open to, establishing a system. There's already a system for registering dogs and cats who have rabies vaccinations. That already exists, so I assume.
But that's by ordinance. It's not by question. It's by ordinance. So my question to you is, are you sure that once I take my dog to get my yearly vaccination and I get that slip that I either pay the $6 or the $46, I'm not going to get a knock on my door or a letter in the mail from the health department saying, nah, I'm in violation of mandatory spay and neuter ordinance, and then I have to get my animal spayed or neutered or else. Is that your understanding of it?
You're probably not going to get a knock on your door. There may be a letter.
A letter in the mail. Yeah. I don't think that that's acceptable. If I'm a responsible pet owner, I'm keeping my animal, it's not doing anything, it's not reproducing, and I don't want my dog spayed or neutered. And the way it is right now, I think is the way it should stay until we do some further discussion. So I believe that if this particular time that I just got my dog spayed, my dog vaccinated, and if I didn't have an appointment Monday to have her spayed within that 30-day time frame, and I elected to pay that $46, I believe I'm going to get a letter in the mail telling me I'm in violation of this ordinance, and I could be then fined, and then I don't know what, because it's not laid out in the ordinance. So the way it is now is the way we discussed it, put it in motion, made it law 9 years ago, to the way it is now. I don't know what's going to happen next. It shouldn't even be a question. That's what we're here to do, is to knock these things out. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Anybody discussing for the first time? Alderman from the 4th.
I'll be doggone. We're just talking about these dogs. I am a dog breeder, and I have no dogs in my yard. The city of St. Louis came at me and my son about breeding some dogs. They wanted him to get his dog spayed, and he refused. So they told us we had to become breeders. We paid for the breeder's license, and the health department comes out and examines to see if you have a kennel built. I had to build a kennel and all, and my son got tired of the whole process and moved his dogs and everything to Ferguson. The health department needs to be concentrating on those wild dogs that have never seen people, that are over in O'Fallon Park. These dogs that are hairless dogs, not by breed, these are hairless pit bulls, hairless collies that are roaming through my community every day and night, catching cats or anything of opportunity that they can get to feed themselves, turning over trash. And we're talking about spading and neutering a dog and breeding. We need to, if the health department is going to concentrate on sending letters and spending money on other things, otherwise we need to get these dogs off of the street. We got dogs chasing people in my community, and in the 4th Ward we are absolutely tired of it. So we don't breed, I have a 200-pound Tosa at home, a sumo wrestling dog from Japan, $5,000, and I am desperately trying to find him a girlfriend. I don't care if it's a poodle, but I'm not going to spade him, and I'm not going to comply, and I rise in opposition to this bill. I learned that from Freeman.
Any discussion for the first time? Alderman from the 28th, you have something to add before the Alderman from the 24th?
I do.
All right, Alderman.
If I could.
Alderman from 28th, please.
Okay. I want to add just a little bit more information to this discussion. You know, what we are considering here today is not revolutionary. It really isn't. Many, many other cities, and actually many states, have already enacted spay, neuter, and microchipping bills. I think one of the differences in this bill versus some of those other bills is that this bill does provide a way for the folks who want to keep their pets, who don't have the money to spay or neuter them, because I absolutely agree with the Alderman from the 3rd that many people, you know, for many people, pets are their alarm system, if you want it, that pets are their security. So this bill does provide a way for those people to get their pets spayed or neutered at a low cost. It also provides a way for the people who want to be dog breeders and who want their dogs to have puppies or cats or, you know, whatever, for those people to get a hobby breeder's license. That enables the health department to inspect that breeder. And I think that's a pretty important thing, because not all breeders are as responsible as I'm sure the Alderman from the 4th is. All of them are not. So this bill really tries to provide for low-cost spay and neutering for people who want to have their dogs spayed or neutered, but really it's a costly proposition. It provides a way for people who want to breed their dogs or have their dogs have a couple litters of puppies or whatever. It provides a way for them to do that and for them to be inspected so that these animals aren't being abused. And then, of course, for the commercial breeders, it provides for the inspection of that and the licensing of that. I guess a couple of comments, if I could, in response to some of the comments that have been made here today. You know, somebody made the comment that, oh shoot, I wrote it down. Where did I write it down? It was such a good comment. Essentially, you know, that it was Mother Nature for dogs to have, you know, puppies. That's true. It's Mother Nature for dogs to have puppies. And then you don't just have one dog to feed, you got several dogs to feed. Then what happens if you can't get those dogs spayed or neutered? What happens? Guess what? They have more puppies. And then they have more puppies. And you know, you've all seen the graphs where, you know, one pair of dogs or cats and how many there are, millions after a really short period of time. Because you know what? You're right. It is, quote, Mother Nature. And we're trying to interfere with that Mother Nature thing a little bit here, and the cat that came to your front porch or the dog that showed up on your front porch, and make a way for people to get those dogs spayed or neutered like they want to, so we can interfere a little bit with Mother Nature, because it's Mother Nature that's putting all these stray dogs and cats out on our street. And you know, of course it's not good for these poor animals to starve to death, for goodness sake, or to get run over by a car, or to, you know, become aggressive on their own. So I guess I just wanted to put this into a little bit of perspective, that dogs and cats, they do get out when they shouldn't. They just do. So if they're microchipped, they'll be a lot easier to return to you, no matter who picks it up, whether it's picked up by city animal control or maybe somebody else picks it up and takes it somewhere. So that'll be easier to get that dog back to you. I think that we have had a lively discussion here today, and I appreciate hearing everybody's point of view. I have met with the APA, met with the gentleman who runs that for a couple of hours. I do understand that their APA is against mandatory spay and neuter, but you have to realize that the APA and the Humane Society, they euthanize 75 to 80% of their dogs. I mean, if that isn't a sad situation, I don't know what is. And that's because there are so many more dogs and cats that are being Mother Natured, you know, into having more puppies or more kittens, and then those end up being picked up and they end up being euthanized. You know, I hope that as the city of St. Louis, we can move as far towards being a no-kill city as possible. I am not naive enough to think that there are no dogs, that every dog can be no-kill. I don't believe that. I know there are dogs that may have to be put down because they're aggressive or whatever the reason is. But over time, I think that this bill will send us in the right direction. You know, I'll just list a few. Denver has a bill like this, Dallas, Memphis, Tulsa, Asheville, Albuquerque, Las Vegas, you know, Rock Island, Illinois. I just picked out Richmond, Ohio. A lot of cities in California. I never want to compare us to California because people usually say to me, Lida, we're not California. And you're right, we're not. But this is not anything really radical that we're considering here today. We're considering taking a step which will make it, over time, we'll have fewer strays on the street, fewer puppies that just get turned out. So that's what this is about. I am going to, as the alderman from the 2nd requested, I am going to ask if I could withdraw my motion and place this bill on the informal calendar today.
Yes.
If it's appropriate at this time.
It is. Alderman from the 15th, will you withdraw your second?
Will you withdraw your second?
Yeah. And you withdrawing your...
I withdraw my motion, and I'd like to place this bill on the informal calendar.
Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill number 107 on the perfection informal calendar.
So noted. That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
Dispense with line item 17, third reading report of engrossments.
Board Bill 100, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Griffin, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute upon receipt of and in consideration the sum of $100,000, a quitclaim deed to Remise Release and Forever Quit Claim unto Grace Hill Neighborhood Health Centers located in Block 569, which is property known as 1717 Biddle, containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 5th, you recognize on third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 100, Committee Substitute.
Yes, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side, I'd like to move to reconsider Board Bill 100, Committee Substitute, for the purpose of putting it back to the perfection calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 5th. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 26th. Any discussion? It's been moved and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman True. Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Griffin,
aye.
Alderwoman Triplett, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderman Wessels, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Florida, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
aye.
Alderwoman Flowers, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, 25 aye votes.
By your vote, you stay in the motion. Alderwoman from the 5th. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Yes, I'd like to move to put that on the informal calendar, perfection calendar, 100 Committee Substitute.
Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill number 100, Committee Substitute, on the perfection informal calendar.
So noted. Board Bill 101, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute upon receipt of and in consideration the sum of $100,000 a quitclaim deed unto Grace Hill Neighborhood Health Centers located in City Block 1335, which property is known as 2220 Limp, containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 5th, you recognize on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 101, committee substitute.
Yes, Mr. President. At the request of the sponsor, having voted on the prevailing side, I'd like to move for reconsideration of Board Bill 101 committee substitute for the purpose of moving back to the perfection calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 5th. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. Any discussion?
I'd like to ask for previous roll.
It's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
That's the extent of board bills for third reading.
Alderman from the 5th, you recognize.
Yes, I'd like to move Board Bill 101 committee substitute to the informal perfection calendar.
Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill number 101 committee substitute on the perfection informal calendar.
So noted. That's the extent of board bills for third reading.
Report of enrollment.
We have none.
Courtesy resolutions.
Resolutions 145 through 198 were passed during summer recess. Resolution 201, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen, the Board of Aldermen congratulates Kiku Obata and the staff of Kiku Obata and company for being shining examples of what hard work and determination can accomplish in a city that works.
I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar and entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of courtesy resolutions.
First reading resolutions.
Resolution 199, sponsored by Alderwoman Griffin, Enterprise Zone for Wilshire Goodfellow LLC, is 1807 Glasgow and 2830 Magazine Avenue.
Alderwoman from the 5th, you recognize on first reading resolution number 199.
Yes, I'd like to move for this resolution to go to the HUD's committee.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 15th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please place resolution number 199 in HUD's.
So noted. Resolution 200, sponsored by Alderwoman Triplett, Enterprise Zone for Beaumont Acquisition LLC, 2720 Market.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on first reading resolution number 200.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would like to move that board resolution 200 be sent to the HUD's committee.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 6th. I'll entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please place resolution number 200 in HUD's.
So noted. That's the extent of our first reading of resolutions.
Dispense with line items 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Announcements. Monday will be a Ways and Means Committee meeting at 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. The next meeting will be Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. And also there will be breakfast for the aldermen from Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union. And there will be a presentation by Metro immediately following the full board meeting in the chambers for the aldermen. That's the extent of my announcements.
Alderman from the 5th, you recognize.
And I'd like to recognize as my honored guest my mother, Ida Ford, who joined us here today, and her lifelong friend who just relocated back to St. Louis. Angie is here with her today. Also, I would like to recognize that, as was just mentioned, we'll have a presentation from Metro on their operations and budget before we deal with their board bill next week, but they brought with them Mr. John Nations, who's the CEO and president. We have Kathy Claiborne, who's the CFO. We have Ray Frem, Chief of Operations, and Adela Jones, the Director of Government Affairs, who are here with us today.
All right, thank you. Hey, Alderwoman. Alderwoman, I think I saw your father come through the door.
Oh, yeah. I think someone did tell me. Also, I have as my guest today my father, Lewis Ford. Thank you.
Any further? Alderman from the 10th.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, this Sunday, the 18th of September, for you folks who have nothing to do, come to the Hill to Rolla-Cockatera American Legion Post, number 15 at the corner of Bischoff and Edwards, for their annual fall barbecue from 11 till 6. Come on by. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 4th.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like everyone in the chamber to rise in recognition of the 10th anniversary of those who lost their lives in 9/11. I think we should do that out of respect for those people who lost their lives in 9/11. Let's all stand, please, just for a moment of silence, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody got out to Forest Park to see the flags on Art Hill, but it is really breathtaking. We had a presentation there the weekend of 9/11, and we all had to go up and talk, and it choked me up to be, to think about that many people dying, 3,000 folks, and it's an incredible visual. I'd invite you to go out there before they remove them. Alderman from the 2nd.
Yes, I'd like to announce that tonight is our last Live on the Rocks concert at North Riverfront Park. It begins at 5 o'clock. The first band will begin at 6. We'll go until about 10 o'clock. We will have some heaters so we can keep you warm a little bit. Bring your lawn chair and your blanket. We have food and adult beverages, and come on out and enjoy yourself on North Riverfront Park, right overlooking the river.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to recognize the Howard Street Neighborhood Festival tomorrow. People come from all over the country back to that neighborhood, which is, the street is located adjacent to Vashon High School. And we have people there in their 80s on back who commemorate growing up in that neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to being with them tomorrow. Also, I'd like to introduce to you 2 new businesses in the 19th Ward. The Flying Cow has great yogurt. It's at 3400 block of Locust. Come over and try it. And we will be opening a Dooley's at Grandin, Washington in about 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to you coming over there and getting those great hamburgers again. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 3rd.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to announce that our first meeting for the 3rd Ward Regular Democratic Organization, which will be discussing the new additions to the 3rd Ward, and anybody that's interested in finding out what ward you're in now, because it certainly has moved in a very peculiar and strange fashion. A week from this coming Tuesday at Clay Elementary School, we will have the first 3rd Ward meeting after the redistricting.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd. Alderman from the 22nd.
Come on, man. This guy.
Did you? No. You read? Okay, you're taking it back. Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to announce to the residents of the 21st Ward that we'll be having our monthly town hall meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the sanctuary. This will be the first meeting for the new residents of the 21st Ward to attend, including those new residents from the College Hill neighborhood. The sanctuary is located at the corner of Redbud and Rosalie.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Same here. 27th Ward would have its first meeting coming off a summer break at New North Side, which is 5939 Goodfellow, which is the Bishop Willie Ellis Center. Again, the new residents that have been incorporated into the 27th Ward, we put out a lot of flyers. We're making as many phone calls as possible. We ask that you come to find some of the great things that are going on in the 27th Ward, and it starts at 10 a.m. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Alderman from the 5th.
Ed, I don't think I heard that the presentation is in this room right here. So you can stay right at your desk. They're going to put up the screen and make the presentation to you right here.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 4th.
Yes, Mr. President, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the renowned program on the world, on the news, Sunday Best, the young lady, Miss Bullock, won the contest. She was #1 in Sunday Best, Miss Bullock, and she'll be coming down to the Board of Aldermen to be recognized by us. She's from the 4th Ward.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move to excuse the alderman from the 7th, 12th, 16th, and 20th wards due to necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn the meeting until Friday, 10 a.m., September 23rd.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.
To all aldermen, there will be lunch in the